on where you may be listening to us here at New York Roadrunners from all over the world. Welcome to Wednesday's Coaches Chat with our fabulous partner at the Hospital for Special Surgery. Thank you so much for joining us today. As I said, we have runners from all over the world, and we love to give those shout outs. So please drop your name and where you're listening from over there in the chat, and we'll make sure that we give you a proper shout out at one point in today's show. Some runners out there may have heard if they're going to be running the RBC Brooklyn Half coming up in May. We had those announcements last week, so maybe you're running the RBC Brooklyn Half. Let us know if you're doing that. Maybe you're even running the United Airlines NYC Half coming up in March. We are just a scant, I think my math is correct, about 7 or 8 weeks out from race day. So let us know if you're running that. How's your training going? As always, with our partner for a Hospital for Special Surgery, we always have questions about kind of where we are when you're training. Maybe you're feeling a little bit of a bump or a bruise, or hopefully not, or some limping going on right there. So again, training questions are always good. Injury questions, we know they happen. We are runners. So leave those questions for us as well, but let us know where you are. But I do want to introduce our fantastic guest for Hospital for Special Surgery. We have physical therapist Varsha Seemangal, if I pronounced that correctly.
Perfect.
I got it right. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you were just coming in from working with a patient, so thank you so much. How's your Wednesday going so far?
It's going great so far.
So far, I know it's only like 12 o'clock, so we have a lot of time left in the day, so hopefully it continues that way.
Exactly. We run on late days here in the clinic, so I'm here until 7, 8 o'clock at night, but it's a good day.
Oh, wait, hopefully they're good things. Hopefully you're not seeing too many runners come in with little issues here and there, but I'm guessing that's just part of the deal when you're working physical therapy. Hopefully nothing too bad though, right?
No, nothing too bad. It's always great when I have the opportunity to bring runners back on the track or on the race course. So it's fun.
Runners, thank you for that. Coaches, thank you for that. We thank you for that. Because again, as a runner, we want to be out there doing the best we can. But again, sometimes you don't always have those things. But one of the things that as a runner, that we always talk about as a coach, we talk about like form, but more importantly, the biomechanics of it and how important it can be when we're looking at, the different aspects of the biomechanic, because the body is an incredible machine. I mean, you think about what it can do, what we're asking to do, and what it can produce. So Varsha, when we look at biomechanics, why is it important to have good biomechanics when running?
It is so important. The biomechanics, like you said, Ben, it identifies the areas of imbalances that your body is going through, and that could be leading to whatever aggravating symptoms you may be feeling. So those biomechanics can tell us as clinicians where your body is falling short and what needs to be strengthened. So having that important biomechanics really translates into how you're running, how fast you're running, how powerful you're running, all of it.
Yeah, so when we think about that, we have when you look at a couple of different aspects of biomechanics, you have force, which we generate in the ground, push off, and what our body is doing. Then you have mass, which sometimes people can also kind of think about what's weight, but is a bit different. And then we have our center of mass. Obviously, in the running that most of our runners are doing, our center of mass tends to stay where it is because we're doing a distance run. We're not necessarily a jumper or jumping over things or under things. So again, when we look at those aspects, when a runner, when you look at the biomechanics of a runner, when you're doing an analysis, do you kind of get into the where their mass is and kind of where their center of mass and kind of adjusting that? Is that kind of where you start, or what elements are you looking at sometimes when you work with
That's a great question. We look at all of it, right? So we're first looking at the way somebody's walking, and then we're testing strength in the hips, in the core. We're looking at balance. We're looking at ability to do some functional tests like going up a step, down a step, single leg bridge, things like that. And then we get them on the treadmill and we look at it from all angles. We're looking at from the back, how the foot is hitting the ground, how the hips are, whether or not they're deviating when your foot hits the ground, right? You talked about forces. So ground reaction force is a big piece of that. The vertical explosion, if your vertical is too high, if you're not getting high enough, your ability to push off of your feet and land using your hips, using all the right muscles. Another piece of it is your your spinal mobility, your ability to rotate, right? Because you need some spinal mobility as your arms are swinging. And some of the things we look at is if people are over swinging, if they're under swinging, maybe they have shoulder issues in the past. So we take into consideration the biomechanics from every angle, posterior, lateral, right? So back, sides, and front view, and we put it all together.
No, and that's so important because you're right, because it does come from all different angles. And as a physical therapist, but also the coach, some people ask us, well, how does this look? And you have to look at every single possible angle because there's all these little things that you may not see as a forward view that you may see from a 45 or 90-degree view from the side as they run by you instead of running at you. So it's so great. And then how can somebody like at home, how do I know if I have good or bad biomechanics? I mean, I know we're always trying to self-assess. That's one of the beauties of human nature. Like I want to self what I'm doing instead of going and looking at somebody, but how could I tell if I have, I mean, what are things that maybe I can look at or runners can look at to figure out if I do have, small things I can work on that maybe will help if I have good or bad biomechanics?
Yeah, so I always tell people it's really hard to see yourself run, obviously, right? So those people that need a visual, we all have smartphones with video cameras now. You can set that up at different angles and videotape yourself running just to take a look at it. But my biggest piece of advice would be just to let your body be your guide, right? So sometimes people kind of have a tendency to lean backwards as they run, and that could slow you down and create an inefficiency with your movement because then your body has to kind of take on the wind a little bit more and it slows you down as you're running. Sometimes you've got your elbows too far out to the side, another thing that can slow you down, and it's better to keep your elbows kind of tucked in a little closer to you to allow for that the pacing to get better. Sometimes people land with their bodies too far forward. So those are small things you can kind of feel and look at. And other things would be if you're noticing like pain, right? If you're noticing pain while you're running in a specific area, there may be an imbalance. There may be a biomechanical reason for that imbalance, or it could be a strength issue, right? Or a little bit of both. So those would be the big things that I would look at.
Yeah, and that's great because I mean, you touched on the strength work. There's posture, there's stability. I mean, you talked about when you look at runners and they come in, a lot of single leg work because it's so important because that does show the imbalance, shows where we have small imperfections or maybe areas of weakness. I think you actually use that term, which is so key because people don't think about it, but running is a one-legged sport. You think your 2 feet are on the ground at one time, but depending on the effort, the pace you may be running, if you actually, to your point, if you videotape yourself, you will see at some point you probably will have one or both legs off the ground at some point. That drive, that force, that ground force that we're using, you're using that and you're propelling yourself. So when we look at like stability and posture and possible like bad, if you have bad mechanics, or bad biomechanics, you talked about strength work. What are some good exercises that someone could do at home to really kind of incorporate? You touched on a few of them earlier. Maybe if you had like 3 or 4, they say, hey, if you could work on these and kind of this would help with mechanics, maybe stability and some strength work.
Yeah, so I have like my tried and true, the things that I look for as a runner, a coach, a physical therapist. I have like 4 main things that I look for that I can say, wow, that looks really good. You're ready for jumping and returning to running. So those things are a single leg calf raise, because believe it or not, you need to be able to propel off of your feet to get into that floating phase of running. And that's what differentiates running from walking, right? That in running gait, we actually get off the air for even if it's a millisecond on both feet. So you need to be able to do a single leg calf raise. I like to have people do 25 to 30. If they can do that without fatigue in the calves, that looks good to me. Another good thing to do and to work on is side lying leg raise. Really important to get your hip abductor muscles. So those are the muscles that lift the leg out to the side. So lying on your side, lifting the leg up against gravity is really, really good. Runners, we tend not to work on this muscle, right? Because running is a forward sport. So we don't consider side muscles or lateral movements as much as other sports like soccer or basketball that involve cutting. But but the hip abductor muscles have shown to be really important for endurance and stability as you're running. So I look for a side-lying leg raise and or a side-lying leg raise in a plank position, which then incorporates core stability with hip strengthening. And it's really cool because there's been a study that shows that, an EMG study that showed that when you combine a plank with a side-lying leg raise, you're actually getting a really good isolated hip abduction strengthening. So that's one of my favorite exercises. So far we have single leg calf raise, right? Side-lying leg raise and or a plank with a leg raise. The other thing is and to your point, Ben, the other thing is a single leg squat or a forward step down, right? Because running is a single leg sport. We're basically hopping on one leg over and over again with alternating movements when we're running. So if you can't single leg squat with good form and strength in your quads, then you really shouldn't be forcing yourself through a long distance run. So those are my main things.
No, I love that. I mean, that plank with the hip, that just sounds deviant. That sounds tough. That's the hard, because the isolation, and that's just it. It's the isolation is what, I mean, runners as a whole. I mean, I put myself in this category, and I work in group training, and I'm out there with our runners quite a bit, and they're happy to run. But the minute we say, okay, time for strength work, I got to go home. I got it. Got to get to work. It's amazing how they just scatter. They're out of there so quickly. They don't want to have to stay. But it's so important. It's important, isn't it? How important is that you get that done? It's crucial.
It's incredibly important. I can't even tell you, I get marathoners in here that are like, I'm good. I'm running like, 5:30 splits. But I don't understand why my back hurts. And, they come in with a six pack, and I'm like, well, let's break it down. Let's see where the imbalances are. And 95% of the time, it's hip abduction weakness. And we work on strengthening that in many positions, and we build them up to what they need.
I'm going to ask the audience out there, because I know we have a lot of people listening on YouTube and Facebook right now. They're leaving their shout outs. They're leaving the questions. We're going to get to them shortly, but we have some good exercises here. What runners out there, what is your favorite or least favorite exercise? I'm curious to know which ones they're going to say, because I know which ones I don't like. I mean, there's fire hydrants, there's donkey kicks, there's anything with a plank, pulse squats. I mean, you can do, a lunge with a jump. You can do, there's all kinds of things that you can do to increase different things you have going through. But if you have some great ones, and the single leg work is really, I do a lot of that, the Russian, either a deadlift or just simple, like just bring like your right leg up and your knee into a 90 to 40, and just hold that 45 or 90 degree angle, and bring the leg up and balance, and just hold that. And you'll feel the opposite leg like working. And people say, you do that for 30 seconds, it's hard. It can be very challenging. So runners, I know you have some thoughts out there, so please leave in the chat. Maybe you got some exercises you like, you don't like. We'd love to hear them before we move on to that. But again, we talked about all these great things. Again, we talked about the strength. I'm sure that's an element to better biomechanics, but does physiology maybe play a role into biomechanics, or is that just something that you just have, and then biomechanics is more on top of what we can control? Sometimes the physiology is how we're made before we even get to running. So how does that kind of play into each other?
So, in my clinical experience, right, everybody has their own body. We are all experts at our own body. We know how we move. We know how we want to move. I think physiology definitely plays a role, but it's not like an end all be all, right? So there are people, as our elite runners, right, demonstrate, they look like they're floating when they run, right? There's a physiologic aspect to what their ability is. But for the rest of us regular runners who just want to run or want to be good at running, but are not necessarily looking to be, winning the New York City Marathon, I think physiology does play a role. For example, if you have arthritis, if you're one of those people that suffers with arthritis, whether it's in the knees or it's in the hips, then you have a little bit more of an uphill battle with running, right? Because it is a high impact sport, and it is going to increase the pressure through your hips, through your knees. But With that being said, if you're doing the right amount of work in terms of strength training and preparation for your run so that your biomechanics look good, then that's less pressure going through those body parts.
Yeah, that's so crucial, runners. I mean, it's so important to take care of ourselves. We have one body. I had a coach actually a few weeks ago, and actually a person I know very well. We get to do this. We get to run. So let's take care of the body that we have. Varsha's giving some amazing intel on biomechanics. We'll have some fact and fictions coming up because runners have all kinds of thoughts on things. So maybe we can dispel a few myths out there with our fact and fiction segment. But I know we have some shout outs and some questions coming through. So we will step over to questions and shout outs. First up, we have Lorianne giving Varsha some love. Varsha is amazing. Lorianne, I'm guessing maybe someone that you've seen in the years past.
No.
Is Lorianne ringing a bell? No, doesn't ring a bell. Well, she's giving you a shout out.
It doesn't, but thank you.
We have a runner, I think is Indu, Club Runners High with Bala. I don't know if that's a local running club, but we have people from all over the world listening. I always have to figure out where our furthest away runner is. We've had people from Germany, from Turkey, Australia, Japan, I mean, everywhere. So it's always amazing. We always try to have who out there is the furthest point from New York that we have. So runners keep dropping in those shout outs. As always, we have some injury ones here. So Varsha, I'll toss this one to you. Phil out there is dealing with some shin splints right now. Those are always fun, always exciting, always enjoyable. We've talked about some exercises, obviously tips. I mean, what are some tips that maybe we can avoid shin splints? But if we do get them, what are some good tips to help out with runners that are suffering from that lovely little ailment?
Okay, so shin splints are awful. So I'm sorry that you're going through that, but but a couple of things that you want to make sure that you're looking at is whether or not you recently went into new shoes. So footwear is important, and perhaps it just needs a little bit more breaking in, and then running surface as well. So the harder the surface, right, you're gonna have an increased tendency to get shin splints, especially if that's a hard surface on new shoes. So two big things to consider. And then shin splints in and of themselves are kind of like micro fractures along the tibia, right? So it is inflammatory. Icing is great for shin splints, and I know runners don't want to hear it, but rest is also great for shin splints. And you really want to watch your running form, right? So there and biomechanics, because there's a chance that you might be landing a little bit too hard through your heels, and you might need a little bit better dispersion of your force as you land and of your body weight as you land over your center of mass or over your base of support.
Yeah, it's so important. If you think about that, like your head, the alignment of the body when you run, the head over the shoulders, shoulders over the hips, hips over the knees, over the ankles. When we think, because shin splints, it's a common injury or common ailment that runners deal with. How important is that alignment? I mean, you talk about the heel drive, maybe the absorption. Yes. Could that also be if a runner maybe is leaning back a little bit too much? Shin splints will happen, I'm guessing, regardless. But where is that alignment and where the center of mass? How does that maybe play a role in hopefully never getting them or alleviating them if we can?
Yeah, so it plays a huge role, right? So if you're landing primarily on your heel, then that's actually an increased tendency for you to be leaning back as you land. So a backward lean, we call it. And if you're doing that, then your body has to work harder to move you forward, right? It has to bring your trunk from this backwards position forward. And if your core isn't on with that, which it's not, because being in a backwards leaned position actually is a passively insufficient position for your core muscles. So your core is not on, then it's going to take other muscles and other areas of the body that have to absorb the shock through the body as it lands, and compensate for you to be able to propel yourself forward. So the way to help with that is to make sure that you're landing, and you don't have to be a mid. I'm not saying you have to be a midfoot striker, but make sure that you're landing with your core on and your body over your foot as you land. You don't want to be back. You don't want to be too far forward. You want the core on, which helps with that alignment. And that's it. It's just like a basic postural thing, right? You want to stand up straight. As you land, you want your body to be over your foot.
Yeah, I mean, and talking about
Right.
the core, I mean, the core can obviously, people think just like the abdominal range or the upper, the upper pelvic region, but also extends much higher, up into the chest area. It's an important area to think about. Phil's actually saying he needs to push himself to do more planks. Planks are different. Planks can be difficult. It takes a certain amount of upper body work, and whether you're on your the forearms or on a full press. What are some maybe other exercises that will still do the core work if planks are difficult because maybe you have wrist, elbow, or shoulder injuries? Because runners are always
Right.
asking that, like, I'd like to do more work, but I don't like planks because of other ailments. What are, like, two exercises for good ab work? I mean, I know obviously there's a crunch, but that also means a lower back. But maybe what are some tips there that runners can use to kind of help with that core?
So this I find to be a very loaded question because I'm very, very particular with my core strengthening when I
Okay.
see runners, because a lot of them feel like they need to just do more planks. A plank is a global core strengthening exercise, right? So it's more whole body. Your core is made up of 4 abdominal muscles. That's it. Your something like crunches and a plank work on the more superficial ones that help with that stability, but they don't really engage your deeper core, which is really important for your spinal stability and really important for us as humans, but also as runners. So I like to give people to make sure that they're able to do something like a dead bug, right, with lying on your back, deep core, belly button towards your spine on, arms and legs moving in opposition slowly, right? Because that works on the control. And then if you think about it, that's what your body is doing when you're walking or running. You're moving your legs and arms in opposition on a stable base, which is your core. So if you can do that, then it's a really, really, really good sign. And the other thing is a bird dog, which is the same thing except on your hands and knees. Abs engaged, right? There actually has been research that shows that a bird dog does engage your transversus abdominis muscle, which is your deepest core muscle. It engages it very well. So your ability to be able to do that with good form, without swaying the back, right, without the hips kind of sinking down, it's really good. And that takes you away from feeling like you need to do planks.
Slow and controlled, that's the key. And man, when you do those dead bugs, slow and controlled or bird dogs, they can, doesn't sound like much when
Very
you first
cool.
start, but after a few seconds, you're like, wow, you feel the burn. And that's a good one.
Right.
One more thing, Indu says he loves favorite exercises are with a resistance band. Love resistance band work. I think it's so important because, again, it's one of those things that's slow and controlled, right? You have to really work that out. And it's a more controlled movement when you have that band.
Yeah, absolutely. We love resistance band work because it helps us use more body weight supported training, right, and strengthening. So you're teaching your body to be more aware of the muscles that are being activated and isolating them to strengthen them. So for me, some resistance work that I like to give people and do myself as a runner is I like to do bridges, some glute bridges with a resistance band around the knees, right? Side steps with a resistance band around the knees, something like a 3-point step with a resistance band around the ankles. I like to do squats with resistance band around the knees. All of things that get your hip extensors, so glute max, and your hip abductors, which we talked about already, working. They're your power muscles. Those are the ones you need strong to support the back with running.
Love it. Runners, keep the questions and the shout outs coming. We have a new game that is sweeping the land called Fact or Fiction. We're going to jump in here with Varsha. We got some to dispel some myths out there. Runners have thoughts on lots of things, as I'm sure as a PT you've heard a lot. That's never going to happen. And else people who never run, they hear things that you kind of go, that's not really the case. So we're going to do Fact or Fiction. What we're going to do is, we talked about this before we got on air. Biomechanics and form are two separate things. Fact or fiction?
Am I
What do you think,
answering that
Varsha?
then?
Yeah, go
So,
for it.
yeah, look, I think that they are two separate things, but they need to be working together to make you a more efficient runner, right? So biomechanics is how your body is landing, how the knees are moving, basically your musculoskeletal system and the force that it takes on with every step of your run, versus your form, which is your kind of like the whole thing, your muscles and your body kind of working together. And we look at all of it when we are looking at you run, right? And you should be looking at that and considering it too, because they definitely are different, but they need to work together to make you a better and more efficient runner. Sorry, Ben, I couldn't hear anything.
I put myself on mute because I was going to drink a drink of water and left myself on mute. Welcome to 2023, folks. Technology is a wonderful thing. My bad. Thank you, AJ. Man behind the camera is like, dude, you're on mute. I'm sorry. My bad. Ask the question again. Fact or fiction? Running will damage your knees. Fact or fiction?
I strongly believe that it's fiction because, as you know, we're talking about it, right? Biomechanics. If you, and form and strength training. So if you are doing the right things to prepare your body for your activity, then it's not going to damage your knees, right? Will high impact activity over years of time possibly lead to a little bit more, I would say, arthritis or you know, other things? Yes, but that could happen with anything that you do. Will it damage? No, I think it's fiction.
I think it's fiction. There we have it, folks. Here we go. Another fact or fiction. Everyone will get hurt running at some point.
Do you know, I actually get this question. I get this question all the time. It's hysterical. I think it's funny. My answer is, like, you can get hurt walking out the door. You can get hurt like walking off of a curb, right? So a lot of people are fearful of running because, like, I don't want to get hurt. That's like my personal fear of going skiing because I treat so many people with ACL tears, right? So, like, yes, you can get hurt, but yes, you can get hurt from running, but you can also get hurt from every single other thing that you do in your day. Running is a choice. And as somebody who wants to run, then it's just smarter to prepare your body in the right way for that run, as with anything.
And you touched on it earlier. You know, if you look at, like, you know, the strength part, and you touched on it real quickly, just, you know, you get the choice to run, but the proper buildup. Like, yeah, if you get out the door, if you're new to running and you throw on a pair of shoes and the first time you go running, you run for, you know, 45 minutes or an hour, or you run for 5 or 6 miles, and you're not prepared for that, you're putting yourself in a position potentially for injury just because your body isn't ready for that kind of workload yet. Anything else that you do, it's like going to the gym the first time. Everyone gets to New Year's, you know, I joined the gym at the first part of the year, I get into the gym, all of a sudden I'm curling too much weight, or I'm squatting, or I'm doing the leg machine, I'm doing more than I need to, and I'm not building. So everyone will get hurt, but we control that key a little bit, right? How much we choose to do. So I'm sure when you work with somebody, do you ask that question of runners, like, how much are you doing? What are you doing? Do you kind of try to get a background on them to get a sense of where they're coming from?
Absolutely. It's a big part of what we talk about because it's the expectation that you're placing on yourself that sometimes you can't help. But what I try to tell people is you have to take what you want almost a little bit out of it as a runner and think about what your muscles and your body needs. And there's a difference there, right? Your muscles, your body needs certain strength ability in order to be able to tolerate going for a 45-minute run. You can't just go out there and do it. You will put your body more at risk to be injured if you do that. So it's a huge conversation we always have. It's kind of like managing the expectation of what your body's ready for versus what you want it to do. And then we always talk about what other things can you be doing, right? Like cross training. Can you swim? Can you get on a bike, right? Things that are a little bit less impactful to your body, but still works on cardio, so that as we prepare you with the appropriate strength training and balance training and single limb dynamic stability and core strengthening and all of it that goes into it, plyometrics, all of that, how else are you helping yourself by making sure that your cardio is on point as well?
So key, so key. And we have one more fact or fiction to wrap up this segment. And maybe I have a small curiosity in this one, but don't let the salt and pepper beard fool you. Running can be done at any age. What do you think on that one, Varsha? Fact or fiction?
A big fact, right? So you
Yay!
don't have to be, you don't have to have been running since you were 5 years old. You don't have to have started, in your teens and been on a school team or this or that. You can just start running. The best part about running is that it's free. You don't need anything. It's wonderful. You can go out for a light jog. You can run at any age, as long as you're doing the right things to prepare your body, like we've been talking about, right? So a couple of basic strengthening exercises to give you a start, and then you just get out there.
It's so true. I mean, I think during the pandemic, there were so many, that's what people found that we could do alone, unfortunately, because we couldn't go to the gym. We couldn't go to anywhere inside. So putting on my shoes and heading outside, people found that outlet. And I know when we started group training back in February of 2021, there were people that were joining us are saying, this is the only time I'm around other people at all during my day, that I'm in my apartment and I'm not doing anything else. And I found this exercise and I love to do it. And age ranges could be from anywhere. They were in their 20s or 30s or 40s, 50s, 60s, but they found running because it was an outlet. It's something that they enjoyed to do. And I mean, how fun is it to go run in Central Park the first time or run on the Riverside? I don't know. What is your favorite place to run in New York City? Where do you like to go to?
I used to, well, I don't live in New York City anymore, but I used to love running down Riverside Drive. It was just my favorite. The Central Park is great, but it gets so packed. But Riverside Drive, you've got that just gorgeous view, and you can just keep going. It's lovely. But yeah, no,
I look special about that.
Yeah, what you were just talking about, right? There are a lot of people that do that, like couch to 5K, right? There's that whole kind of progression out there of how do you get from your couch to running a 5K. But I would always tell people just start with walking, right? And then start briskly walking. And then once that feels good, then maybe start jogging, right? So it's just really just getting out there. You can be any age, not to shout out my dad, but he's in his 70s and he loves going for a run, right? Like he's the one that got me into running when I was young, but that's his favorite activity. He runs, and then, he bikes on a stationary bike to keep his cardio up. You can do it at any age.
I love to hear that. I mean, again, we all aspire. I mean, run for life. That is the slogan, the motto of New York Road Runners. If we run for life, that's what we want to do. That's, we want to be out there, be healthy. I mean, some great fact or fiction tips. But I know we have shout outs and questions. Runners, keep dropping in those questions and shout outs here as we make our way through the show. So keep dropping in and let us know where you're coming from. Maybe you're running the RBC Brooklyn half in May. Maybe you're running the United Airlines NYC half in March. Maybe you're even looking a bit farther down the road to November. You people out there are always looking at the TCS New York City Marathon in early November. Have you run the marathon? Have you done the TCS New York City Marathon?
I did. I ran it in 2011. I also ran the Hamptons, I would say way back in like 2007. Okay. I've done a bunch of halves. I have young kids, so I haven't run the marathon since my son was born. He's 3, and my daughter is, since my daughter is born, right? And my daughter is 5. So, we're getting back out there though. My daughter now comes on runs with me, which is awesome.
I love to hear. That's amazing. I love that. That's great to hear. I mean, it's beautiful. You get out there with the family. I'm sure it's something special for your time with you and your daughter. That's got to be amazing.
It's just so great to kind of be able to do it with her. Running is a choice, but it's a privilege, right? So we get to be able to be out there, and it's really special to share it with those that we like to spend time with and those that we love. Oh, I actually have to go back on our shout out. I do know Lori. I just couldn't place her. She's one of my coworkers. Hi, Lori. I'm so sorry.
Well, the mystery is solved, making sure we have everybody with love out there. So thank you so much. But we will head back over to questions and shout outs. Here we go. Okay, we have Sarisha. I think it's Sarisha. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. She is from New York. She likes planks and Pilates. That's a 1-2 combo there for you right there. And Billy says he's running on March 19th. That is the United Airlines NYC half. Billy, looking forward to seeing you out there. Hopefully, your training is going well. But we do have some questions. Angie has a question about what's a good IT band stretch. The questions are at the bottom of the screen. You can go ahead and read that. So we'll go through that one. What's a good IT band stretch? And then for the patellar tendonitis. Oof, that's some tough ones there.
Oh, yes. All right. So,
any suggestions here for Angie?
Yes, definitely. So a great IT band stretch. Some people find that it's not very okay. So you can do it the answer is you can do this a few different ways. If you're lying on your side, you're going to bring the IT band of the leg that's bothering you. You're going to bring the leg you're going to straighten it and bring it behind you and just kind of let it hang down. That's a really nice way to kind of lengthen and stretch out the IT band. And then the other ways, which you probably have heard of and have been doing, would be just foam rolling or using one of those rolling sticks to help get out the tightness. A lot of times with patellar tendonitis, you do have a lot of soft tissue restrictions, which would be in the form of IT band tightness, hip flexor tightness, even groin tightness. So you just want to be able to make sure that you're stretching all of those areas, right? So a nice hip flexor stretch would be putting one leg behind you, either on a chair or a bench or on the floor with the knee on something soft like a cushion or a towel, and the other leg in front of you, and kind of just pushing your hips forward to get a nice deep hip flexor and quad stretch. The stretching out the groin is, getting into that like lovely butterfly position, either on the floor or one leg crossed over the opposite knee and pushing the knee down so you can get a nice groin stretch there. So it is with the patellar tendonitis, it's like an umbrella term. It's an umbrella term for there's a lot of soft tissue restrictions and weakness in the hips and the core. So it's a combination of flexibility, stretching, and then also making sure that you're doing the right exercises to strengthen.
Love it. Great. Angie, all the best. Hopefully all that helps out and you get better, because those are not fun issues. Next question coming our way. What do we got? Oh, there we go. We have a registered for the RBC Brooklyn half marathon. Do you remember your first half? Remember how much fun that was?
So much fun.
It was a lot of fun. I remember my first half, especially my favorite distance to run. I really enjoy. If you had a tip, if you had like 2 tips to give a first-time half marathoner, what would your 2 tips be?
So it's also my favorite distance to run. For the first time, I would say trust yourself and the work you've put in to getting yourself there, right? That's it. Like you're not gonna like magically just like cross the finish line. You've put in the work. Trust that your body is ready for this. And the other tip really, and it seems like cliche, go out there and have fun, right? When you take the fun out of running, you're thinking about it too much and it just becomes awful. So enjoy it, enjoy the experience. The Brooklyn half is fun. People are cheering you on along the way. There's some places where there's music playing. It is just a fun atmosphere. Just enjoy it. Those are my big tips. Trust your body and have fun.
I think that's spot on. I mean, when I was doing, enjoy it. Regardless of the finish time, it's going to be your fastest half marathon. You're going to be your fastest ever, because it's the first one you've done. And don't forget that. And you can do hard things. You can do this. There will be moments out there that you may say, this is tough. It is. It's 13.1 miles, folks, 21.2 kilometers. It's not, if everyone can do it, they'd all be out there, but they're not. You're one of the people out there. You're getting it done. Believe in yourself, and I think have fun, enjoy it, because, man, the Brooklyn half is a great day. You go down Ocean, you end at Coney Island on the boardwalk. I have friends of mine that they kick off their shoes, they're in the sand, and they go jump in the water, take care of themselves. Then they run back over, and they just indulge in everything, because you're going to work hard. You're going to have a training cycle. You're going to ask a lot of your body. You're going to ask a lot of your family to support you because you're going to have to be out there doing the work to get yourself ready. But don't forget that, you wanted to do this, you get to do this. And more importantly, you're going to do it and have a great time. So best of luck out there. If you have any other questions or tips, we have some RBC Brooklyn Half launch stuff coming up in March. We have a few shows, so make sure you come back. Let us know how your training is going, and hope everything's going good. Next question. Andrew's asking, how do we prepare for the Manhattan Bridge at the United Airlines NYC half? Have you done our new course for the United Airlines NYC half, or you did the old course where we went down West Side, or?
Yeah, the old course, but I haven't done the new course for the Manhattan Bridge.
Yeah.
Have you?
It's a good one. I love our new course. I love our new course.
Okay.
I mean, it's challenging. It is not flat. The old course, you started in the park, you got your 5 miles from the park out, and then you went through Times Square, and then you had that pancake flat run down West Side. It was like you could build the speed in there. The new course has the bridge, so it's a little bit more. I mean, but if you've done the New York City marathon, so you've done you've done the 5th and 9th Street Bridge, all the bridges in that race. What were some of the things that you did in your training back in 2011 to prepare for a bridge in a race? What were some of the things that you did if you couldn't actually get to the bridge? I'm assuming he doesn't have the bridge here. What were some things that you could do to prepare for that up and down and in a course?
Yeah, so if you're living in an area where you don't have an ability to do any hill training, then it's really good to get on a treadmill and practice some incline work. And you're going to do it not at the beginning of your run, right? So you're going to kind of make sure you're setting into a run a good 2-3 miles when your body's already starting to get a little bit tired, and then push up the incline a little bit. That's a great thing to do. It's also great to work on a little bit of speed work to help with the hill or the bridge, right? Because it's going to ask your body to push a little bit harder, and that's what speed work does. It asks a little bit more from your body. So putting in the miles for the half is important, but changing it up every so often and throwing in some interval training in there would be a great way to prepare as well.
And another tip that a coach taught me years ago, people were training down in Florida. I run outside, it's pancake flat. You have a parking garage. Parking garages are amazing tools. Safely, obviously, you don't want to be going there during times that people are pulling in and pulling out. But if you have a parking garage, that's also another good incline to work on that can simulate hill work or bridge work out there, folks. So great ideas. Hill work on the treadmill for sure. You can use the stair climbers. Anything kind of helps build that knee lift, that drive, because that's really what they're going up the bridge. But also, you want to work on the downhill too. You don't want to be braking too hard. We talked about good mechanics, good biomechanics. If you're leaning back and driving that heel on the downhill into the bridge, that can obviously you're absorbing all that shock up the body. That can cause some some loss of energy down the road in the race. So find the parking garage, use those, use the treadmills. Speed work is obviously good. Some great tips there, but have fun, and we'll look forward to seeing you in March at the United Airlines NYC half, my friend. Next question. Oh, this is a good one, Phil. Do these actually serve anything do these do anything when I run Varsha, or do they just hang at my side? I mean, what do you think? Do these do anything?
Right. Yeah. So, arm work, arm strengthening, right? Shoulder strengthening is actually really important, right? So we focus on our legs a lot, right? And our core, but your arm swing and your ability to arm swing really helps with propelling your body as it moves, right? So think about it. When we walk, right, our arms aren't just hanging by our sides. They're moving with us. So there's a reason why they're there. For running, your arms are moving forward and back, right? What that's doing is it's helping with your spinal mobility and your spinal rotation. So working on strengthening the arms is really important because it kind of pulls all of that together. So what we do is we have people work on not pec strengthening, right, or upper trap strengthening. I have to tell you that the big tips for arm work or strengthening the arms is really working on shoulder blade or scapular stability strengthening, right? So you need stability through your shoulder blades. You need to be able to have that strength in order to help with the spinal mobility and arm swing and propulsion through your entire spine with running. So things like mid rows, low rows, lat pull downs, right? Shoulder kind of abduction work in different planes, that all helps with the posterior chain in terms of the spine. And it's really helpful for runners.
Yeah, I always make the joke, you don't want to have little T-Rex arms when you run, right? You want to have nice fluid arms, relaxed upper body. I mean, I joke with runners. We were doing a workout in Central Park. We're doing 600-meter repeats, and this runner their arms are moving, and I was like, I want to see the elbow come back. And we always describe it like, pretend like you're walking on the street. There's someone too close behind you. You drive the elbow back. You want to push that arm because that's going to, as you said, that's going to propel, because you push here, and then the opposite arm will come up. It's a push and a pull. It's going to propel the body, where we're working more efficiently. We touched on biomechanics earlier. That's part of that, where our center of mass is and those things that extend from that and how it propels our body. So yeah, Phil, these things, that strength, it's kind of important. And it goes back to earlier talk. This is the part of that runners don't want to do. I can go out and run for 3.5, 4 hours, do that twice a week if I had to. Ask me to do 10 squats. Oh, hey, look at the time, I got to go. So
right, exactly.
I think we got a couple more questions coming at us. What do we got, AJ? Oh, hip muscle. We talked about that a little bit earlier. I don't know if Otto was here, so maybe kind of expand upon that, give some different tips, because yeah, that's, again, you talked about how important those hips don't lie. So
yeah, they do not lie. Otto, that's a great question. We did touch on some exercises for strengthening the hips before. So if you have a resistance band, or even if you don't, our kind of like basics here, right? We always look at somebody's ability to do a bridge, a single leg bridge, because you need to have bridges actually work on hip extension strength. So that's like glute max. So a bridge, a single leg bridge, everybody or a lot of people have heard of clamshells, which help with hip rotation muscle strength, right? With a resistance band, leg raises, so leg raises on your side, which help with hip abduction, leg raises on your back, which help with some good quad strength, which you obviously need for running, leg raises on your stomach, which help with hip extensors as well. And then you got to get off the table, right? So we don't want you on the table for running, because running is a moving sport. So hip exercises, standing up. You've like I said before, you have like your classic side steps with a resistance band. Those are great. The further down you place the resistance band, so we usually start with it above the knees, but the further down you go, below the knees, mid-calf, ankles, it's a longer lever arm for the body and the hips, so it actually becomes harder. That's a great exercise. Things like split squats, regular squats, things like a windmill, which is a single limb dynamic movement, right? Works on hip stability, working on one side while allowing your core and your hips to kind of hinge. So you're looking at all of that, right? Because running involves all of that. So getting on one leg really does help with hip strengthening as well. So kind of anything like that. Any other things you would add, Ben?
I know, man, but the first time I did clamshells, the next day,
Yes.
Not gonna lie, that was yeah. Good thing I live on a single floor apartment, because stairs would not have been my friend that day, because I was like, wow, that is incredible. I mean, like, you do donkey kicks and fire hydrants, but I remember like we were doing some stuff and one of our coaches was like, hey, we need to do some clamshells. I was like, okay, cool. I was like, no problem. I was like, whoa, hey, that's a little bit different, because to your point, again, it's runners don't work on the things on the sides. We just don't think about that. And so, yeah, it's very important, runners, because again, running is a full body exercise. I mean, we have the endurance. You could be an aerobic machine. You could go for hours, but we want to be healthy. We want to do this for life. We want to do it because we love to do it. We want to do it with our kids. You mentioned that earlier. So yeah, there's so many great things. We have actually one more question. It sounds like, I think it just popped in. I don't know if AJ's got it queued up. So we have 3 shout outs, and then I'll come back over to the last question. We have Jeffrey coming in from the Bronx. Jeffrey always giving us some Bronx love. Thank you so much. Karina says, loves the Manhattan Bridge during the United Airlines NYC half. Karina, I think you may be in the minority on that. I'm with you there. I love the bridge, the views of lower Manhattan that we have. Upper Manhattan, it really is a beautiful, unique experience. It's never an easy part of the run. It comes right about the halfway point, but if you do it well, you got the energy at the end. And then Indu is giving yourself, Varsha, and myself some love, saying loving today's session, absolutely amazing. I would agree. I mean, this has been so instrumental. I love talking about biomechanics and all the things that runners think we understand and think we want to do, but it's so much more. And then when you get nerdy with it, it's kind of fun because we all do it. But then when you hear like the benefits, the pluses, the minuses, then it all kinds of, the puzzle, as I like to call it, begins to become clear on what we're doing. But we do have one more question, I think, AJ. If you have it queued up, we'll drop it in here. And there we have it. I get this a lot, and I don't know if you've heard this. I don't know if you have a preference. I mean, breathing, nose versus mouth. I mean, I have my thoughts. Every runner would. Do you have a preference, or do you kind of let runners kind of figure that one out for themselves?
So it really all depends on the runner, for me, and how much they overthink. So ideally, my preference is in through your nose, out through your mouth. It allows really great expansion in through your nose of your thoracic cage and your thoracic cavity, allows your lungs to fill up, and then out through the mouth really helps to expend or expel, and help you with like a power move. You don't have to think about it in accordance with every step you take, right? So we just want you to very naturally be able to take a breath in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. With that being said, there are some people that overthink that. And I'm just like, you know what, don't just breathe, like breathe how you can and how you feel like you need to in the moment, because that's one more thing that you need to think about. And we don't want you to have to think about it because it's a natural and normal part of what we need to do every day.
It's always funny, like you're in the park and maybe you're running on your own. There's always the one person that's breathing really heavy. And you're like, wow, are you working really hard? Or is that just how it's always like you can hear them from like 2 blocks behind you. And and you're like, oh my, and they just breathe heavy. Again, everyone, it's to your point, it's just going to become what's very natural. I mean, I have some coaches that are like, we want to have on the inhale, you take so many steps, on the exhale, you take so many steps. I've tried that. I have a hard enough time to keep count when I run, let alone if I take 3 steps on an inhale, 3 on an exhale. Again, just kind of what naturally comes to you when you're running. Because it should be comfortable. You should be thinking about, how everything is kind of flowing and interacting with yourself when you're out there, and you'll kind of figure out, you'll feel out what works best. Obviously, the harder workout you do, and we talked about hills and doing a bridge, you're probably gonna be breathing through your mouth a little bit more because you're trying to get in more oxygen, because you're asking your body to do a lot more work or a bit more work on those more intense anaerobic workouts. But yeah, and when you're running slow, again, most of your running should be pretty conversational, pretty easy, and that's a good way to test it out next to like doing the talk test. Are you able to speak full sentences when you're running? The into the nose, out to the mouth, what feels comfortable. You should be kind of in nice cruise control, enjoying the beautiful views as you get out there for a few miles. But I think we have one more question. We have an injury question from Jeffrey, so I think we're gonna drop it in here and then we'll put it out there. Jeffrey, what is the best way to come back after a front upper leg injury? So I'm guessing that's a thigh injury, Varsha. I mean, that's kind of an interesting one. What do you think here? What kind of tips would we give Jeffrey here to help him out here?
Front upper leg, I'm assuming quads. If it's the front and then the upper leg, right? Because that's the thigh right there. So it really depends on what the injury was, right? So sometimes people have like quad strains, and sometimes they have like pain or just weakness in the quads if you're experiencing buckling in the knee. So the best way to kind of get back into running is to work on strengthening the thigh muscle. If it's tightness that you're feeling, you want to make sure that you are doing a little bit of flexibility work as well. It could be foam rolling out the quads or some stretching for the quads. But really the strengthening is key. Things that you can do to strengthen would be a leg raise on your back. That's a really wonderful quad strengthening and activation exercise. You can get on a leg press if you have it available to you. That helps the quads a lot. Double leg squats, start with sitting to standing from a chair and just making sure that you're doing that properly, because your sitting to standing is your squat predecessor. So if you can do that correctly, then you are going to be much better at it once you move the chair away. And that's going to make sure that when you're on both legs, that the quads are symmetrically working, and then transition that into something like a lunge, a forward walking lunge, right? Working on alternating quad strengthening, and then split squats or single leg squats, moving more into those kind of dynamic single limb exercises for your front upper leg or your quads, as we're guessing that this is what you're meaning.
All the best, Jeffrey. Injuries are never fun, but we're getting some knowledge here today from our wonderful friends at Hospital for Special Surgery. One final fact or fiction, Varsha, before we go. Did you have fun today on the show? Fact or fiction?
Fact, definitely. No, thank you guys so much for having me. We love our runners and our NYRR road runners, and we're always present at all the races, right? We always have a stretch tent, so if you're running the Brooklyn Half, stop by. If you have questions, you just need some tips on stretching, foam rolling, we have foam rollers available. So it's a great thing that we have for you guys, and we love doing it. And feel free to reach out if you have any other questions for me as well.
Let me thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Hospital for Special Surgery is a fantastic partner. Love having you on the show. You always just bring great information. Our runners love all the tips and tricks. And remember, runners, these things do matter when we run. Make sure we get upper body work out there. It does make a difference. But take care of your bodies. Take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Wednesday. I believe we will be back next week on February 1st for our next show. In the meantime, be safe out there. Have fun. And we'll see you at the races.
See you at the races.